I don't know, we'll probably have a shutdown. Nothing is inevitable, but I would say it's probably likely.
They'd rather shut the government down than protect the health care of the American people. That's unfathomable.
I'm hoping there are Democrats out there who are reasonable and understand what's at stake here. If the government shuts down, it is on the Senate Democrats.
The Republicans have until midnight tonight to get serious with us about solving this crisis and keep the government open.
Well, a little more than 5 hours and a partial government shutdown goes into effect. Time writes this. Here's why both sides expect to win the shutdown, careening toward a government shutdown at midnight tonight. The players involved all seem to be occupying different realities. The White House is puffing up its chest like an inevitable victor. The Republicans in Congress think Democrats are destined to blink, given the cost to constituents. The Democrats, they're digging in, knowing their GOP brethren cannot get even a stopgap resolution across the finish line without their complicity. With that, let's bring in our panel here in New York. Sandra Smith, co-anchor of America Reports. The Five, co-host Jessica Tarloff, and Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends. All right, Sandra, what do you think?
Well, as Thune said, it's looking pretty much like we're heading towards a shutdown here. In fact, he said the Democrats, when they emerged from that closed-door meeting earlier, sounded more like they were talking about how to react to a shutdown, how to plan for a shutdown, rather than how to avoid one. So brace for impact is the headline on Axios right now. Talking to our good friend Larry Kudlow earlier, he essentially is saying, let's go for a Doge 2.0 here, talking about Republicans saying that Democrats are falling into their trap. He's talking about the federal employees that would be furloughed as this seems to be going, rather than now we're talking about federal employees that would be fired. And these are some of the jobs that the GOP was targeting in the big, beautiful bill that now may be handed to them on a silver platter, as Larry said earlier. Thune said earlier at that news conference, this is a binary choice, no room for negotiation, although Jeffrey seems to think, last we heard from him, that he believes that there will be some re-engagement before midnight tonight. So we'll see where this goes.
Jessica, that letter from the OMB director is essentially a threat that this shutdown happens, you're going to fire people that the discretionary funding doesn't cover.
And Donald Trump made the same threat when he was speaking earlier today as well. He said we can do a lot of really bad things. We can do things that they don't want us to do. And yes, Democrats don't want people to get fired, and Democrats don't want people to lose their health care. But I think the Republican Party is trying to act like they have the upper hand, and they just don't on the merits. First of all, 45% of Americans would blame them versus 32% that would blame the Democrats. And we saw what happens when you give Republicans the votes. We did that in March, and they have governed by and for themselves. They think they don't have to negotiate, when typically on these kinds of things, on CRs, you do that because you don't have the 60 votes to do it.
Right, I hear the polls. I hear what you're saying, but this is kind of simple. You know, this is a plain fund the government.
It's not. Because
continuing resolution.
But it's a clean resolution inclusive of these cuts. And there are smart Republicans like a Josh Hawley, even Senator Thune has said that he's been concerned about this. When you look at what's going to happen with 114% hikes on these ACA premiums, that affects Democrats just as much as Republicans. And there are a lot of Republicans on Obamacare. Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance.
Until the end of the year. So you fund the government.
Enough with this.
And then you argue the point.
Who's to say that they're going to sit down and negotiate with us afterwards? They came out of that meeting. Trump is posting racist AI videos saying, I don't need to deal with them at all. Mike Johnson, J.D. Vance are lying about what Democrats are asking, saying we want to fund health care for illegals, which is impossible and doesn't happen. It is impossible. They're saying they want to cut $50 billion from rural hospitals. They took $137 billion out and then gave us back $50 billion and said that it's our problem.
Right.
They inflated the levels during the pandemic to give everyone a 4% decrease on their premiums. So when it was time to take the money away, Joe Biden says, sorry, out of time. Wish I could. So now President Trump, with his big, beautiful bill, says, let's go back to Obamacare, the funding levels, not including the illegal aliens, not including people that aren't eligible.
Don't get health care, Brian.
Well, they do. There was money put aside for them in Joe Biden's spending levels. This is the most important thing. This is Joe Biden's spending levels. So, in other words, John Thune is saying, hey, okay, if you want to talk about health care, we'll do it. So extend it up until November, and we'll talk about it because it's not up until December. Make it a clean CR. And to your point, Sandra, what he's trying to say is we don't want, what the Republicans are saying is, I don't want anything for Democrats. Let's continue funding at Joe Biden's spending levels. And then the next few weeks leading up to the appropriations bills getting done in the Senate and House, theoretically, we'll have a chance to maybe make a deal. But here's the bigger story, and I think you'll agree with this. The Democrats are outlining what they're going to run on next year, and that's health care. And this is why they're underlying it. So they're grabbing health care and saying, this is the problem, when there's other issues that they could look at, but they want to run on the Republicans are taking your health care away, and they're using this as an opportunity. And John Thune, the most logical man in America, says, just to extend the CR, and then we'll discuss it in the interim.
All right, so I asked Senator Thune about that at the White House yesterday.
The premium tax credit issue is something we're willing to have a conversation about, but the fact of the matter is it is rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. It needs reforms.
But you're willing to work on this issue in particular?
Yeah, I mean, part of this is the base Obamacare program is not going to be affected. What's going to be affected is the enhancements that the Democrats added when they had the majorities.
So bottom line, we're going to get to this point where people are going to start feeling stuff. You know, at the beginning of a government shutdown, everybody says, so what?
Yep.
But then a few days in, it's like, wait a second.
Yeah, you have to.
How does this affect me?
You have to brace for the economic impact because it is a real one. You have people that are currently in jobs collecting paychecks that no longer will be. That is money that is taken out of the economy, and those are consumers that are not spending. Then it becomes about the duration of the shutdown, and there can be a prolonged impact. I know Austin Goolsbee is going to defend how that plays out. He's going to be joining me on the program tomorrow. But the economic impact is a real one. But again, it's the length of time that we shut down that matters the most.
We call that a deep tease.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, my goodness, look the way she slipped that in.
Really.
I'm just trying to do.
I was waiting for a graphic.
I know. I couldn't believe it. It's like she took over the show. It was unbelievable.
Jessica, meantime, President Trump is talking about drug prices. The headlines, Trump announces this deal with Pfizer to lower drug prices, including Trump RX website. There is an agreement by Pfizer to lower prescription drug costs for Medicaid and dealing with Trump. What about this and the prospect of, as healthcare is becoming the topic, the president is going down this road too?
Well, the president's instincts have always been better than the rest of the Republican parties on health care, quite frankly. He says things like, don't cut people's Medicaid and Medicare. We should probably leave Social Security alone as well while we're at it. And guess what? The cost of your medications and the cost of going to an emergency room or your health care in general is too high. If he could pull this off and he could be running like what Mark Cuban is, I would be thrilled of it. And I think that there would be Democrats that would want to work with him on it. Obviously, it has to have the Trump flourish that it's called Trump RX, the Liberace version. But, you know, this is a major issue, and he probably knows that it's going to be the crux of the argument for the midterms.
Brian?
The whole thing with health care is no one's cutting health care. Let's bracket out who's eligible for the health care.
Josh Hawley admits that they're cutting
we just want to
healthcare.
make sure. But what happens is it gets bloated. People offer it. Joe Biden had no sense of dollars. He just wanted to blow up Obamacare and get as many people as covered on that plan as possible. But 2/3 of the budget goes to health care and Social Security. So what they tried to do, the Republicans, is say, let's just make sure the people who are supposed to be eligible for it get it, and make sure the corruption's out of it. It's not to take your health care away, but I find it very interesting that the president is talking very closely about the Cuban plan. He should call Mark Cuban. Mm-hmm. He knows that Cuban does deal with the president once in a while. He's got a cutting-edge medical plan. He's ready to launch it big time, and that might be a good ticket.
So as we get ready for this government shutdown, just to look at the RCP average of congressional job approval, 28% approval, 60% disapproval. It will not get any better in 4 hours, 5 hours.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.